Do you think that if the US were to annex Greenland, it would help basically make the case that the US is trying to conquer other countries and therefore help strengthen the argument for people that the Shah really is just a puppet of the US regime of the US empire? Because it'll serve as proof that the US is trying to conquer other countries and take over other countries and therefore help make that plausible case that the Shah is just a US empire or puppet.
Conquer has a very specific meaning. If you financially incentivize the people in a region to become part of your country, that's not conquering. That is basically diplomatic negotiation. The same way United States got Alaska, right? So, I mean, the people in Greenland, how many people live there? It's like 60,000 people only. I think a lot of people will change their position once they are financially incentivized enough. So that's not conquering. That
May
is
I
just, and I think,
What if
and
the
I
US
think
can't
also,
financially incentivize?
huh?
What if the US
What?
can't or doesn't financially incentivize? What if the US just goes
Then
for
it
it
then it
anyway?
won't then it won't happen. Then it won't happen. And also, I think it's a good idea for Greenland to be part of the United States.
may
But Jeffrey, what do
Okay,
you
but
think
let's
about this? Yeah, go on.
It
s
I'll let her finish.
No, no,
let's
go
say
on.
you can't financially incentivize, they don't wanna do it, and they're refusing, and the only way the US can do it is to just, kind of force its will upon the people.
Okay, but even if that happens, that has nothing to do with like Prince Reza Pahlavi's position. So it would be very hypocritical for somebody to say like, "Oh, so we should be against Prince Reza Pahlavi," because it would be a contradiction. You're saying like, "Oh, we should respect the will of the people in Greenland," right? And then now you're ignoring the will of the
Mhm.
people in Iran, right?
I
So
would still support
anybody,
Prince Reza Pahlavi,
no, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking
like,
about those
just to make
people.
that clear.
Yeah, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about those people. It doesn't. Here's the thing: when you are in a war, right? Whatever help you could get, you don't. It doesn't really matter the moral judgment people have on the help that you could get, right? You're in the middle of war for survival, right? Even if other people think like, oh, these are imperialist evil, who gives a shit? Like we're dying, we need help from wherever we could get, and if it's America, so be it. I mean, I love America, but even if America was bad, I will still take that help, right? And anybody who says like, anybody who wants to turn against Trump because he's ignoring the will of the people in Greenland, then only to then go and then ignore the will of the people in Iran, wanting Pahlavi back in Iran by coming and saying like he's a puppet. I mean, here's the thing: the people who consider Princess Pahlavi to be a puppet of America, they say that anyways. Like they're not waiting for any, like Greenland is irrelevant to this whole conversation. They're already saying that, and they're irrelevant. We already have enough information to show that the will of the Iranian people is Pahlavi. So we're not going to have more people saying that because these are the same people who would have said that regardless.
may I just really quickly add something about Greenland?
Sure, yeah.
So, I understand the concern, but I mean, the discussions between the United States and Greenland and Denmark right now are actually not about the US annexing Greenland. I think really what it amounts to is the US being given some land in Greenland to build some military bases. So I think that's really what it's going to amount to. And also, you have to remember kind of how President Trump operates with negotiations. He starts off with a big dramatic sounding ask, and then he ends up meeting in the middle, which is what he wanted in the first place.
The whole Greenland thing is just communists around the world always wanted to act like United States is an imperialist force, and that never made sense ever because America was always anti-imperialist. It was actually created as an anti-imperialist force, and it always remained an anti-imperialist force. So now that this whole Greenland narrative finally gives them an excuse to suggest that, oh, look, this is imperialism, right? So that's why they're jumping on this whole narrative that, oh, they're going to conquer in Greenland, so this is imperialism. That's why people are talking about this, but it has nothing to do with imperialism. Jeffrey, you wanted to add something?
Yeah. Okay. So to bounce off a couple of the comments, Armin is right that annexation is a very specific term with a very specific definition within geopolitical or geostrategic parlance. It means forced projection with the goal of conquest or forced territorial cessation. I'm setting my military there. I'm conquering this land. I now own this land. I determine what happens on this land. That being said, I think what Samantha is saying, and this is probably in part due to the kind of running discussion we're having on one of the posts I post on the discussion board, is she's saying that the annexation of Greenland would become an example of, say, the members of the autocratic bloc to use as part, like a backdrop for the strategic information influence operations, and that might erode national will or, say, US led Western alliance will to support our allies in other areas. And to Armin's point, though, I mean, and I understand the concern. There's a couple issues with that. One, to Armin's statement that those people that say that are already going to say that, indeed, they're already saying that now. Two, to Brandon's point, there's a very particular way that President Trump approaches, discourse or diplomacy within members of the Western Alliance, specifically Western NATO bloc members that have free road underneath the U.S. security umbrella, because they consistently try to find ways to go back to the good old days where we pay all their defense and then they can sit there and allocate it, the money that they are by law supposed to allocate towards defense, towards things like social entitlement programs, all the while telling us about how like Americans suck and all this other stuff. Even if they got, like those people in the Western NATO, Western European NATO allies that have traditionally free road underneath the U.S. security umbrella, do all their, political maneuvering and they win the midterms and all this other stupid shit. It's not possible because we cannot cover all bets anymore. Not where it stands right now. We're in the process of fixing that. So there's a reason that President Trump is taking the position he's taking, because he's not going to allow, well, if you need Greenland for like all these strategic reasons, are you going to give us a pass on our NATO defense? No, you need to pay your bills. You need to pay 5%. Period. That's it. There's no debate. We don't care how many people they put in the street. Doesn't matter what they do. Finally, if it does come to annexing Greenland, even with the blowback, you have to weigh relative risks, Samantha, just like I outlined in the discussion board, right? Greenland has a very unique, specific strategic significance regarding ensuring both Western Hemisphere and our NATO allies' security against an increasingly belligerent Putin's criminalized counterintelligence state and Chinese Communist Party, for all the reasons I outlined, whether it's strategic missile defense, hypersonic defense, guarding a very particular gap regarding subs coming off a very particular, port in Russia and the rest of it.
The shipping lanes as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's that too. So, I mean, that's kind of like my short and skinny of it. I just want to bounce off that. Maybe I can help tighten that chat group. If people want to look at the discussion going on there's a thread and discussion board where we're having that. I kind of posted one of the, like, it's kind of like a couple of slides that were part of the reports that I put up about a year ago to people in this administration regarding Greenland. And you can see it go back and forth, and then you can hopefully make up your own mind.
All right.
I want to call LF next. LF. Hello, LF.
All right. LF1, LF2,
Alex, you mean
LF.
me?
Oh, she's unmuted.
No, LF.
Hi.
Oh, hi.
I might be in a slightly noisy place, but I first want to say thank you to Ruth, Shalom, and hello to Susanna, especially. If you can't hear me, I typed in the chat. It's really, my question is about the MK and how they managed to get funding to
right.
be able to pay off these people. Thanks.
LF, can you write it in the chat? Your question that how did the MEK, because your audio quality is really bad, are you asking if how did MEK get funding? Hello? Okay,
I think
if
she
that's
had
the
two parts,
question.
but that's the first question.
Okay, write the second part in the chat. The first part is, after the fall of the Islamic Republic, their main source of funding originally was Saddam was funding them. After the fall of Saddam, the educated guess is that Saudi Arabia has been funding them. I'm not sure if that's true, but that has been the educated guess. Right now, I don't know where they're getting their funding at the moment, but they did make a lot of money from Saddam and at some point from Saudi Arabia.
Does Saudi Arabia, sorry, does MEK not hate Saudi Arabia as much as the Islamic Republic?
No, I mean the MEK has been working with anybody and anything that has ready to support them. They have zero principles when it comes to survival. You know, they keep changing their mask based on whatever they need. I mean, they used to wanting to destroy Israel, and then they ended up working with Israel. Like they talk about a shift in direction, right? Like one of their major agendas was to destroy Israel, and then at some point they became, So it's weird. Like their entire goal is like, would they do whatever and anything that is needed to just basically become more powerful.
Okay, I was just curious because although I know their numbers are not supported, say, in Iran, I even meet random people who spout their language, and I was wondering how do they keep themselves going in this way? I've never heard anyone talk about their funding, so I thought I'd ask you. Thanks, Simon.
Let me see if I could, because we always get in on the Persian channel, we always said Saudi Arabia, and we have never seen any evidence for that. But that's the assumption that we all make all the time. But apparently, we don't know.
There are too
That's something.
many interests that Saudi Arabia need to work on for it to be. I don't think it's something that will be advantageous for them right now.
So here, the MEK's funding is notoriously opaque, but it primarily stems from three main sources: historical backing, a significant endowment allegedly stashed away from their former patron Saddam Hussein prior to 2003. So I was correct about that. Regional rivals. Widespread consistent among intelligence analysis points to Saudi Arabia as primary current benefactor, using the group as leverage against Tehran. And also the diaspora's narrative, the group officially claims to be funded by voluntary donations from Iranian expatriates, though experts argue these funds are insufficient to cover the massive global lobbying and infrastructure costs. Okay, so Saudi Arabia then.
Can I just, one little thought I wanted to add to this? I know a lot of groups do all sorts of jiggery pokery with money, and they have. And I saw in your film that you put up all these different affiliations they had. I'm wondering if they also play that globalist game of creating all these different companies and shell companies and moving money around.
Everything they do is very hidden, so it's hard to come up with an exact understanding on how they do it, but they have years of basically experience of moving money secretly from different shell companies to different lobby groups. So it's actually a mystery. All of this is a mystery. But
So I found a really nice article from Daily Wire about the military buildup in the Middle East. It's very detailed, kind of says everything about what the president is sending there. So I'm just going to link that in the text chat in here for you guys.
Nice. Thank you. Post it in the chat.
What I do is all day, every day, I, excuse me, aggregate a crap ton of news. I'm like a human aggregator. So
nice. This is good. Thank you for that. Okay. I'll look into that. All right.
Next on the list, I have Aaron, but if you're driving, I can come back to you.
Aaron?
I am all right. I'm used to this, so I run a business.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so, first off, I do want to apologize. I don't sorry, I'm horrible with names, but to the lady who has families in Iran, I do apologize about what's going on with you, and I hope you get news soon. Hopefully, internet gets fully restored sooner rather than later. So, big thing I wanted to touch on, Armin, I had a question for you, and then I did want to give some pushback on America's imperialistic ambitions. But my big question is, I know that the EU has come out and finally basically said the IRGC is a terrorist organization. But like one of the things I'm not hearing is a lot of countries, like maybe a handful, are actually speaking up with that statement from the EU. So I kind of want to hear your thoughts on that, or maybe there's some new news I haven't heard.
What do you mean handful of countries? Can you clarify?
I know Sweden was one of the first to come out, but I've only really heard France, now Great Britain, and I heard Spain was signaling support for the EU.
Yep. So,
if you think of anything of the silence from other nations not saying anything.
So yeah, I mean, France, Italy, and Spain have been horrible at this. They are very sensitive regarding cutting relationship with the Islamic Republic. A lot of these countries, like Norway and Ireland, have been taking the wrong side, very much in favor of the Palestinian cause. They're on that side of things, and they are very hesitant to come against the Islamic Republic. France has always historically been on the wrong side of all of this. So for us, this is not a surprise. The surprise has been the fact that they agreed to accept the Islamic Republic as a terrorist group. And we kind of suspect that this has something to do with the US. Like, I don't know if this is true or not. I think Trump might have done something, because just before they announced it, they seemed like they were going to resist doing anything like this. And all of a sudden, the news came out that every single one of the members of the European Union, all of them came out and said, like, okay, we're doing this. I don't know what happened behind the scenes. There does seem to be some pressure from the United States, or maybe basically Trump gave them something in return. I don't know. But yeah, we expect them to push. I mean, they now have classified the IRGC as a terrorist group. They're still insisting on maintaining some form of a relationship with the Islamic Republic, just maybe not with IRGC. So they still haven't gotten to the point where they consider the Islamic Republic to be something that you need to completely cut relationships with, which is very telling, because Europeans always try to look at Americans as being not caring about human rights and only caring about economic interests rather than human rights. But this is basically the Europeans, after the greatest massacres in modern history, continuing to want to maintain relationship with the Islamic Republic. Like, this is this is going to be looked back on with shame when it comes to, like, in history, because people are going to remember this. People are going to remember this. The Islamic Republic is like Nazis, right? At least with the Nazis, people could claim, like, oh, we didn't know what they were doing. They could at least claim ignorance, right? Because a lot of the Holocaust, the level of the crimes that they were committing became apparent after the Nazis fell, right? So if people didn't, but now we could, like, this is right after all of these videos came out and all of the evidence came out that the Islamic Republic is just killing their own people on such a high scale that no other country has done in modern history against their own people. And still Europeans are still insisting on maintaining some form of a relationship with this Nazi-like regime for their economic interests. So any claim of moral superiority by the Europeans when it comes to human rights should be laughed at from now forever, basically, every time they want to bring that up, ever. But I don't even know if that answers your question, Aaron. Does that answer your question?
No, I mean, it definitely does. I mean, especially when you brought up the point about history, because that's kind of been my whole ordeal, is that they're kind of like looking at the writing on the wall that no matter what, U.S. intervention or not, the Islamic Republic's done. Like their credibility's gone. Like they're never. You cannot say you are a nation, a Western nation with classic liberal ideals, and do business with a country like that after what's gone on. So I think regardless, they've crossed a line that they know there's no coming back on. They're trying to be on the right side of history. That's ultimately, they have the opportunity to not, to basically jump ship. So,
but here's a silver lining to all of this. The fact is that given that the Europeans would never agree to list IRGC as a terrorist group, suggests to me that the fact that they have done so has convinced a lot of them that the Islamic Republic is about to fall, and that's the only way that they would be convinced to do such a thing. Because if it wasn't going to fall, they would have wanted to maintain relationship with it. So did it? This is the silver lining. The fact that they have crossed, to that far, maybe is based because their intelligence is telling them, the politicians, the intelligence, agencies within European countries are telling the politicians that the game is over for the Islamic Republic. So that might be a good sign.
okay, good deal. Thank you for that. And then the next kind of, I guess I would say the point I wanted to cover the most was with America and just kind of what I think we're seeing with Trump and just kind of why I think people need to not worry as much. One of the things, the biggest things that we're seeing is he got elected. He had a very specific agenda. And this was 2016, his first election. And right in the middle of it, his what he was hoping would be his second election, he got interrupted. So he has essentially 4 years to accomplish as much as he can. If he doesn't take that off the table and he makes the European allies stir, he's going to get what he wants ultimately at the end of the day, which I think is like was brought up earlier. He wants military bases, but I also think he wants to ensure that now in the long-term future, China or Russia have nothing to do with any mineral resources in Greenland. He kind of like Venezuela, like you've robbed them of oil. And I think that, and part of Trump, what's in the back of Trump's head with Iran, that's a major source of oil for China. So geopolitically, this all lines up with our own strategic interests. But then on the humanitarian level, as someone who was a soldier and that, was in the United States military, we do kind of bring some of our ideals with us, like freedom of speech, freedom of the media, the right to bear arms. Like a lot of people don't realize that we did not disarm the Iraqi people when we invaded Iraq. They got to keep their guns. And we are one of the most unrestricted first world Western countries when it comes to these rights. I mean, there are limitations, but there are very, very, very few. And I think kind of like, I like to bring this up, like Armin and Goldie. Armin, how many American fans do you think you have comparatively to other nations? Just answer that real quick.
I think at least half of them are American.
So I would say out of a portion of the world, that's a very large percentage of Americans using their unrestricted freedom of speech and our media to broadcast a voice for people in Iran. Would you agree with that?
Yep. Yeah.
Would anybody agree or disagree that that's a bad or good thing? And that's kind of where I'll end my topic there.
No, that's a good thing, obviously. Yeah. Let me just. So, guys, if you want to speak, raise your hand so you could get added to the list. If you want to respond to what Aaron is saying, they'll write in the chat, and Danny will, keep an eye on that. No, so I completely agree. So honestly, I think that America's domination by any means necessary, to me, in my opinion, is a good thing, because the alternative is Chinese domination. And all we have to look at is compare the values of America and of the values from the CCP. And then it's obvious which side we should be rooting for. Even if there are some American politicians that we might not like, even if there are some American methods that we do not like, we have to pick a side. So everywhere America is winning, the whole world is winning. Because everywhere America is losing, it's the CCP that is winning. Honestly, I don't think among the other challengers to the United States, anyone is as significant as the CCP.
Until about a
Yes.
week ago, I wanted the CCP to win. It's
Yeah.
not obvious
Yeah,
to
I
the
know.
average American.
I know. Okay. Well, the fact that you changed sides is a huge win. So it's very optimistic about the future of the world when Samantha changed to our side, right? So
A win is a
so
win. Okay, you know
yes,
what? A win is a win.
yeah,
Yeah,
Thank
I
you,
agree.
Samantha.
I
I
agree.
needed that laugh.
yeah. So yeah, what was I saying? Oh yeah. So this is why if Iran becomes a U.S. ally instead of a CCP ally, that's a win for the world. This is why if Greenland, if somehow I don't know if he's going to be able to do it or not, but if Greenland becomes part of the United States, I don't know if that's going to happen, or even if it doesn't happen, something like close to that happens, that's a win for the world. If Venezuela becomes closer to the United States instead of Putin and the CCP, that's a win for the world. If Cuba becomes closer to the United States, that's a win for the world, because this is a guys we're and also energy and rare earth minerals are key because the future of the world is the technologies of the future depends a lot of like it requires a lot of energy and it requires a lot of rare earth minerals, and when it comes to these 2 points, unlike other things in the economy, it's a zero sum game. So whatever America doesn't have, China, like the CCP, will have. So you like Americans and anybody else who supports classical liberal values, they should be rooting for America's maximum win in more control over more energy and more rare earth minerals, because with whatever flaws the United States has, is basically the main supporter of all the values that we support here. It's the U.S. military. Yeah, guys, the values supporting values is beautiful, but you cannot support these values without a significant military strength. Okay, just cheerleading these values is not enough. We need a significant military strength to back them, and it's we are so lucky that we live in an age where the world's most significant military power is supporting the best values in the world.
Well, I always remind people, if you want peace, prepare for war. End of story. You're not going to ever keep your peace if you're not prepared to defend it.
Okay, but do you wanna hand the EU over to China?
The EU doing more trades with China is never going to be handing over the EU to China, right? So, um,
And not to mention,
Aaron,
China uses
Aaron,
economic muscle. Oh, sorry.
no, it's okay. But like, if you guys want to speak, like, just raise your hand so that we're not speaking over each other, right? So just remember that EU is becoming less and less significant when it comes to the power that they have. I mean, they're still an
That can
economic
always change.
powerhouse.
There's a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
know,
people in the
but
EU.
like, you have to. Okay, but you cannot replace America with the CCP. Okay, like the economic power that the United States has over Europe, you could do more deals with China, but nothing will replace the United States. The European countries are not even viable as countries without America's military support for their security. They can't even defend themselves against Russia right now, right, without American help. Look at what is left of NATO without America. So I think a lot of we're going to go to China and leave America, I think a lot of that is an empty threat. There's nothing that could replace America's economy. There's nothing that could replace the security that America's military brings to Europe.
You don't have that attitude towards Greenland.
All you're gonna get is some more trade with China and some less trade with America. That is never going to be as significant as just replacing the United States as an ally. Nothing
Well,
can
then
replace.
you just made
But
the
even
case
if
for why we don't need to annex Greenland because Greenland can't replace, the US with China.
no, so here's the thing. United States needs having Greenland will give it more control over Greenland rather than going through agreements and asking permissions to
But
do
it'll
this
give
and
it
this and
less
that.
control over the EU. It'll make an enemy of the EU.
It would not make an enemy. It will just make them slightly annoyed. That will not turn
Well, it
it
will
will
make
not
them
turn them
more
into an enemy.
mad. Like,
Yeah,
okay,
but not
so
it would not turn
fight
him.
more
It would
control
not
over
turn.
Greenland, but further distancing
Okay,
slightly with the
Samantha,
EU.
I think your miscalculation is that you're basically treating geopolitics like it's basically high school kids being mad with each other. Okay, at the end of the like at the end of the day, what speaks the most is not who has who you like and who you don't like and what agreements that you write on a piece of paper. At the end of the day, might, who has the most might and who has the most military and economic leverage, that's what makes the difference. At the end of the day, if America, like you could say like, oh America, I'm going to speak to the hand, I'm mad at you, like what you did this. Okay, at the end of the day, if the American consumer, okay, has such high purchasing power that at the end of the day, if you want that, you need to have a relationship with America. No matter how much you're upset with America's behavior, at the end of the day, you cannot say no to that. So
Well, then you made the
economic
argument for
leverage
why
and military,
Greenland can't say no to America because we don't need to annex.
economic leverage and military leverage is more important than this drama high school kid stuff. But go on, and then
Well,
we go to
then,
Jeffrey.
again, you just made the argument that we don't have to worry about Greenland saying no to America because Greenland can't say no to America if countries can't say no to America.
What Greenland can't say no to America means that we could have Greenland for America. Like, what do you mean, like,
Or
can't
we could
say no
just,
to America?
have a military base on Greenland because Greenland can't say no to America and we don't need to annex it to put the military base or keep our military base
No,
there.
no, you're going to have a lot more. Here, Jeffrey wants to respond to that. Jeffrey.
So I think what Armin's trying to differentiate between is there's a big difference between, say, the EU, the so Greek, like there's a difference between people leveraging economic connections and defending against military intervention, right? So yeah, Greenland can't defend itself against Putin or the Chicoms, and even if, let's say, it just even status quo of Greenland is not sustainable for the United States or United States led Western alliance because of the increased belligerency borne out by, I know you don't like it, Samantha, right? Borne out by Putin's criminalized counterintelligence state, the Chinese Communist Party. So defending Greenland or expanding our abilities on Greenland to counter that increased threat is not the same as, well, if you do that, then Europe's going to go to China. I mean, Europe, like the Western European allies, have already been trying to play that two sides against the middle. That's all done. Daddy America's back. It isn't going to matter how many protesters bitch in the street. We're done. We're all done with all the nonsense. It's all done. You can smile and laugh all you want, right? I mean, look, the very things that probably underwrote your support of the Chinese Communist Party, why not just supplant the Chinese Communist Party with America, right? I mean, if you supported the CCP, by definition, you supported a top down dictatorial system that is unbelievably brutal. Why not support system leadership with one that's not? You still get the system leadership, just not one that's horrible.
These are the arguments that people are making for ownership removes the tenant risk. A future independent Greenland or a new Danish government could revoke base access to or invite rivals like China to build nearby. Resource sovereignty. Greenland holds massive rare earth deposits. Ownership lets the US mine them under American law, bypassing foreign regulations and securing a supply chain independent of China. Arctic gatekeeping. As ice melts, the Northwest Passage becomes a global shipping shortcut. Owning Greenland means controlling the toll booth of the 21st century trade. The Golden Dome argument. Full sovereignty allows the US to install advanced missile interceptors anywhere, anytime, without needing foreign parliamentary approval or diplomatic negotiations. Bottom line is bases, US bases provide presence. Sovereignty provides a permanent resource rich fortress that can't be taken away by a change in local politics. But more importantly than that, it just streamlines, because when you're a tenant there, you have to go through so many regulations to do simple things. Once all of this is under American law, you could just basically do it much more straightforward and much faster, and without going through a lot of bureaucracy.
I'd like to gently suggest that we go to next on the list.
Yes, let's go there.
All right. So next I have Alex.
First of all, I want to say thank you so much to Samantha for switching sides from supporting CCP to supporting America. Because as someone who lived for 11 years under Soviet Union, I don't want to see what happens next. I mean, this ideology has killed 100 million people and made billions of them miserable. And you don't want to know what happens to your food supply when they take over. So thank you very much, Samantha, for doing that.